I'd be a little scared going into the season with what they have at corner. And it's kind of a numbers game there. You have so many young, talented guys that, look, if they don't sign someone, I'm really looking forward to training camp and watching that battle because who knows? Maybe they do have a diamond in the rough because they have so many of them that, like, your odds increase because you have Tay Gowan and McPherson and Kerry Vincent and some of the undrafted guys they just brought in. But if this is a team with serious playoff aspirations to then say, hey, one of these guys is going to be good enough.
Got your Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We bring in another follically challenged guest.
Not as bad as I. Come on, Jody.
He's got a little,
Dave's
when he's got his dark.
Yeah.
I mean,
got it on the sides too, but
he's got us beat by miles.
My beard.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, this is by choice, most of it.
Yeah.
Very nice. When was the last time you got a haircut, Zangaro?
I cut my own hair.
Really? You don't have a Ploby, do you, Dave? Not back in those days. Do you know what a Ploby is?
I have no idea what that is.
Really? Yeah. I'm showing my age.
You and I both know that one, McMullen.
Yeah.
Never have I had a Ploby done to me, but it's like
that was one of the great infomercials of all time, Dave. The Ploby.
What
was
is
that?
it?
Was that Ron Popeil?
It might have been. I forget. It was a hair cutting device that you would attach to a vacuum, and it would cut your hair supposedly with no mistakes possible. So it made it.
I'll
so
tell you
simple.
what, that doesn't sound so bad. I have to look into
Oh,
that.
it's great. You got to look it up. It'll be on YouTube. Floby,
Yes, okay.
Look it up. It's tremendous.
I love a good infomercial too.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll get stuck watching one of those the knife infomercials, and that'll be my
great. Yeah,
that'll
some
be
of the,
that's a half hour for me. That's no problem.
I'm a
Cut
big
the brick in half. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
The knife that cuts the brick.
Yeah, I'm a big
You need
Sham
that.
Wow guy as well. Big Sham
Okay.
Wow guy.
Oh shoot, that's.
I get that. I watched like the I know we'll get to the schedule. Sorry, but I watched the like all the cooking ones. It's like this is an oven that does 3,000 things, and it's like you will never use it. Like my parents one time got suckered into one of these things, and it's like still sitting in there.
My wife. Real quick story, Dave. My wife made me buy her the Emerald air fryer, which does like what you're saying, does like 57 different things. I think we use 2 things in it. Two of the.
At least you use it.
Yeah. Well,
exactly. Not bad.
for a while.
Right.
It's in the garage now. That tells you how well it went over.
Dave Z, if the opposite ends of the spectrum were he is the missing piece to the Eagles winning the Super Bowl in 2023 to stop, don't even bother. Tay Gowan is good enough. Signing James Bradberry falls somewhere in the middle of those 2 things. Which one is he closer to? You're good with Tay Gowan being the starter or Super Bowl. We're going. Put your money aside. We're going to the
Skipping
Super
over
Bowl
Zach
next year.
McPherson just because I like Tay Gowan.
Yeah, I do like Tay Gowan, by the way. But I mean, if they have a chance to sign Bradberry, you do it. It's just how much is it going to cost, and are they going to be willing to spend whatever it costs, knowing that they also have Darius Slay, who's a really 16 mil a year on that contract. So you're talking about significant money. I'd be a little scared going into the season with what they have at corner. And it's kind of a numbers game there. You have so many young, talented guys that, look, if they don't sign someone, I'm really looking forward to training camp and watching that battle because who knows? Maybe they do have a diamond in the rough because they have so many of them that, like, your odds increase because you have Tay Gowan and McPherson and Kerry Vincent and some of the undrafted guys they just brought in. But if this is a team with serious playoff aspirations to then say, hey, one of these guys is going to be good enough, I don't think that's good enough. I mean, I think that they need to still add at that position.
Before we get to the schedule, since we went down this road, Dave, from my perspective, because you look at safety, same type of thing, but Marcus Epps has played a little bit. So I think there's a little bit more of a comfort level. But it seems like an obvious need, and they don't have the numbers So in a lot of ways, I'm more concerned about safety than corner because at least I have a bunch of darts to throw at corner. And maybe it's Tay Gowan, maybe it's Zach McPherson, maybe it's Kerry Vincent, maybe it's Josh Jobe or Mario Goodrich, but you got a bunch of guys. Safety, it's sort of like Marcus Epps or bust, unless you believe in Kayvon Wallace, and I've seen enough of Kayvon Wallace. Am I crazy to think safety is more of an issue than corner?
No, I see what you're saying. It's kind of on at one position you have at least a baseline with Marcus Epps, and then really not much after him. So the depth is an issue at safety, whereas the starter position is a bigger question at corner. So I still think corner to me is a bigger issue because I don't know who the starter is going to be. At least at safety, I know it's Anthony Harris. I know it's Marcus Epps, and I'm not saying that's good enough because I looked at their secondary from last year and thought they need to improve it. And they've actually done to this point, and there's still a few months, they've done the opposite. They've lost talent in the secondary. So that should bother you a little bit. But at least Marcus Epps, I feel like is steady and solid. Whereas the other corner, like one of those guys might be okay, but I haven't seen him play. I mean, we've seen Zach McPherson play some mop-up duty, get some snaps when, Slade would leave a game for, a few series, but not enough to feel comfortable with. At least with Epps, he can play. Now, the problem is you typically want to have three safeties.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be moments where you want to use one. I came up with an idea a while back. I want to get your take on it. I wonder if in certain situations, the versatility of Avonte Maddox lets them kind of play him in that big nickel role and bring because at that point, you're just trying to get your best defensive backs on the field. I wonder if it wouldn't be like a Josiah Scott, who they
put him at nickel. Yeah.
Put him at nickel and then kind of bump Avonte back to safety when you go with that package.
We brought that up. Jody and I brought that up, Dave, because Avonte played safety as a rookie and acquitted himself well in some.
I liked Avonte as a safety, and it's a shame because my long-term goal was to get Avonte as safety because I just liked him back there. He reminded me of Bob Sanders, honestly, just like an undersized, rangy safety who wasn't afraid to hit. For him, I think he's best served as a nickel corner. But
well, that's the problem. I think he's a really good nickel corner. I don't want to. I think the Eagles have a top 10 nickel corner, and I don't want to affect that position by then you're affecting too. It's like the old Stoutland thing. I don't want to move people around. I don't want to move two spots when I got one really solidified.
Ideally, but Stout will change that when he can get his best five out there.
Yeah. But I hear what you're saying, and there's some. Hey, why not Kaiser White? You can't call it big nickel with Avonte. You could call it big nickel. You'd have to call it smaller. I don't know, somewhat bigger nickel.
Yeah.
Why not? You have three linebackers now. Why not TJ Edwards, Nakobe Dean, and then Kaiser White is sort of like the big nickel?
Yeah, I mean that would work. When you have linebackers that are 230 pounds, you can, it's not like you're running LeVar Arrington out there. You have some flexibility, and these guys are rangy enough. I mean, Nakobe Dean can cover, and he can go sideline to sideline. Kaiser White, former safety, so it's like they have that. And you're right. That would actually be a big nickel. Whereas what I'm saying, I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, would be the double nickel with two nickels out there.
Buffalo nickel might be a way to go. Let me ask you about a player who we haven't touched on in a while. We touch on everybody on the Eagles defense, and this guy has completely become the forgotten man. John just said he's seen enough of Kayvon Wallace. He is what he is, not good enough in his estimation. How about Davion Taylor? Does he factor into their plans at all? They've gone up, they've upgraded at linebacker. Probably does tell you something of what they think of Davion Taylor. We're only 2 years removed from him being a third-round draft pick. I forget what it is off the top of my head. He might have been drafted in right around the same slot that Nakobe Dean was. And
He
you
was
think about the
later.
difference
Yeah, it
between
was like
He
101.
was
wasn't
almost
he?
a fourth round pick.
Yeah.
He was
all right, so
101.
it was late third. Okay.
A late
Yeah.
third. And it's funny, the third round is really, to me, the biggest disparity in a round. Like early third round to late third round, because you have the comp picks. There's a big difference in talent. I don't know what Davion Taylor is. It was a real shame for him and for the team that he got hurt again last year, because they were at a point with him where he was starting to show really positive signs. He was starting to get it.
He was starting games, right? There were games where he was playing as much as the second most linebacker snaps on the team.
Yeah, he was a starter, and he was going to be a starter the rest of the way, and then he got hurt. So I think if he would have played out the rest of that year and shown improvement, there's a good chance we'd be talking about him in a bigger role this year. But who's he taking snaps away from?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult.
I mean, like you're taking Kaiser White off the field. Look, maybe if and I don't want to put this on him, but maybe if Kaiser White doesn't work out as well as we think, this team has a track record of mistakes at that position. I don't think Kaiser White's going to be one of them. I don't think we should judge him based on those past mistakes. But if that happens and he's not as good as we think, maybe Davion can find his way on the field, because I think that would be the spot you'd want him, because he's so athletic. He'd probably be your weak side guy. So he's probably the backup there right now. There's so much to like about him because the athleticism's there, but he, more than anyone else, needed to play. He just needed to kind of learn on the job, and he didn't get that chance last year. So it's tough to find a way for him to get better if he's not playing, and I don't know how he's going to play. So it's a tough deal. And that was one of the issues I had when they drafted him, because he seemed like a guy who was like willing to do what it took, but he needed to just have the on-field experience. And they were willing to.
I think he was getting better, Dave.
I used to tell a joke about him that he was the fastest guy to the wrong spot that they had.
Yeah.
But
and I think
he started to get better. Like his instincts were getting better, and like the more he played, the better he got. And so I really felt bad for him last year that he got hurt, because he had a big opportunity. And now I look at the linebackers and think, well, I'm not taking Kaiser White off the field. I'm not taking Kobe Dean off the field. And honestly, I'm not taking TJ Edwards off the field in whatever role they give him.
And I think TJ really helped Davion, because TJ is so instinctive. And
if they were able to like make one player, if you were able to put Davion's athleticism and TJ's instincts together, you'd have an all-pro.
Yeah. And Davion was really physical. He was really bringing a physical aspect to the Eagles defense. So now he's kind of buried. It's a little disappointing, but that's what happens with injuries. Let's shift it to the schedule, Dave. Obviously, not a big that's a win, that's a loss guy, but I tend to look for themes in the schedule. In this schedule, I don't know. They could have called up Howie Roseman. He couldn't have put together a more favorable one on paper. Part of it is playing you play in a bad division, you're matched up against a bad division. So I think if you look at all these strength of schedule things, which are meaningless, but based on last season's record, the 4 NFC East teams have the easiest schedules. There's a reason for that. What were your themes when you saw the schedule?
A chance to finally start a season on a good note. I mean, the last 3 times they've made the playoffs, it's because they've like overcome these awful starts to their season. Even last year, see them get in a hole. This year, they have a real chance here. Lions, Vikings, Commanders, Jaguars. They should be at least 3-1 through that. If they're not, then there's a problem. They have to take care of the teams they should beat, and that's been an issue for them at times. But I look at the early part of the schedule and think, man, if they can get through the first 4 weeks with a 3-1 record, then you play Arizona without DeAndre Hopkins, so the timing works there pretty well. Yeah. And then the Cowboys are a tough game. It's been a tough game for them in the past. But they have a chance to go into that Week 7 bye, which is a little early. But they have a chance to go into that Week 7 bye feeling pretty good about themselves. And after watching what they've done the last few years, I think that would be a real positive. I mean, the last time they got off to a good start in a season was 2017.
Yeah, it's been a while. And go ahead, Jody. You were
I
going
was
to
going to say, I want to hit on the 2 Dallas games. You mentioned the Dallas game coming up after what could be a real nice run to the start of the season. And then again, in the back half of the season, they're the 3rd game of 3 straight games on the road. So one, I think, is advantageously placed, the early home game. One is disadvantageously placed, the late road game. Is Eagles' season going to come down to that late road game against Dallas? Is the NFC East going to be hanging in the balance on Christmas Eve in Dallas?
It could be. Yeah, I think it's possible. And it's if you have to quibble with the schedule a little bit, they do have a few road games on short weeks, and that's one of them because it's a Saturday game. So that's not easy. You play at Giants, which is just a drive, but then you have to fly to Chicago, come back, fly on a short week to Dallas to play what might be the most important game of their season. That's not ideal.
on Christmas Eve. Throw that into it as well.
On Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
So they have the chance to either make or break a lot of people's Christmases in the Philadelphia area. It's a tough game, and they've struggled with Dallas. I mean, it feels like they have to beat Dallas if they're going to win this division, and they at least have to split. So that's a team that's really given them fits in recent years, and it just has a feeling like they have to get over that hump if they really want to take that next step and be a division winner again.
There's always that one game where you lose that you probably shouldn't for most NFL teams. And I'm looking at the schedule, and I think everybody, and I'm going to go to your old stomping grounds, Dave. Everybody kind of looks at the Houston Texans and says, well, they're a bad football team. You should win that game. But short week flying to Houston, that is a low-key difficult spot for the Eagles. The league never wants to go give teams long trips on Thursdays, but they're never going to go cross-country. But that's as far as they're going to send you. Is that a tricky spot for the Eagles with an
a little bit?
team?
I guess. And sometimes you have, you play an AFC team, you don't really know that well, and anything can happen. But I just don't think the Texans are very good, honestly.
Well, no, they're not.
The one that honestly the one that scares me a little bit more is week 3 in Washington.
Yeah.
That's on a short week too. And I know it's not like a far trip, but I'll be honest, Carson scares me a little bit because you just never know what version of him is going to show up. I mean, maybe he just overhypes himself to the point where he's throwing with his left hand again, but that's something that is in the back of my head a little bit because he's still a really talented quarterback. They have plenty of weapons there. And if the Eagles sleep on that game, which I don't think they should in week 3, but that's one to me that if you're looking for a game, like you said, that they should win that is a little concerning, that one comes to mind.
Yeah, I said we had Glenn Macnow on in our first hour, and I said I would have rather have Carson at home first and play him on the road second because they can get inside his head. Think about it. Week 3, the Commanders are 0-2, and they're coming to Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia faithful are ready to give Carson an earful. That could be.
By the way, I love the NFL schedule makers giving the Commanders the Jaguars.
Wow, it's great.
I mean, that is trolling at the highest level for Carson. I mean, not only did the Jaguars knock him out of his last home, but
here's my concern about Carson, though, Dave, because he's here on Monday, November 14th, Monday Night Football. I think there's a 50-50 chance he's benched or hurt by that point. We might not get to see Carson. We're going to get to see Doug come back pretty early, week 4. But yeah, by week 3, pretty confident Carson's going to be out there. November 14th, not as confident.
Yeah, but I mean, he did play the whole year last season.
That's true.
He didn't not necessarily well at all times, but he played. He stayed healthy, and I mean, the Commanders don't really have it. Who is he going to play that poorly that they're going to bench him? maybe.
Yeah,
but
who they still have
Taylor
Taylor
Heineke.
Yeah,
Heineke, and
Heineke.
they drafted Sam Howell, but
Yeah,
I mean,
Sam. Yeah,
Not a
fifth
Sam
round
Howell
pick
guy.
though.
I'll tell you the
pick.
game that scares me a little bit, and probably for a different reason than most people would think here in town. It's the week after against Jacksonville. I still love the quarterback. I know he didn't do much last year, but there was a reason he was the number one pick in the draft and the highest ranked and rated pass. How much did Urban Meyer really handicap that team last year? Doug, just by being the professional that he is going to go in there and be better than what they had. I think Lawrence in week 4 could be an issue for the Eagles, especially if they don't sign James Bradberry. Get him done now, Howie, because Trevor Lawrence could come in here and cause some problems week number 4 with Coach Dougie P on the sidelines.
I think they're lucky to have that game early, the Eagles, because I think the longer Trevor Lawrence is with Doug, the better he's going to get. You're still going to see a fairly inexperienced quarterback in week 4. And I get what you're saying. I still like Trevor Lawrence too. I don't think it feels like the world's forgotten about Trevor Lawrence, who like a year ago everyone thought was just can't miss prospect. So you're right. I mean, he's 1 year removed from that, and there's clearly talent there. He was in an awful situation that no first round pick deserves last year. So I'm curious to see how he performs. I just don't know if that team's talented enough. I know they spent in the offseason, but I didn't necessarily like a lot of what they did.
Yeah, I don't like where they spent, or obviously overpaying Christian Kirk would be most notable. Setting off a firestorm. Every other organization's probably angry, including the Eagles, who had to pay $25 million to AJ Brown. But I want to go to that portion of the schedule, Dave, because that to me is the most difficult from a talent standpoint. You got a 3-game stretch, November 20th to December 4th. You're at Indianapolis with Matt Ryan. Green Bay comes here. Tennessee comes here for the A.J. Brown revenge game. Is that going to tell us how good the Eagles really are, that 3-game stretch?
In mind, it's the toughest stretch on the schedule. The only 3 games in a row, I believe, with teams winning records last year. That Packers game is as tough as they come. They're a really hard team to beat. I know the Eagles went there a few years ago and pulled off a perfect game to beat them, but it's just not easy.
Not perfect to Jeffrey.
That's true. But that's the toughest game on the schedule is week 12 against the Packers. I know it's a home game. I know it's Sunday Night Football, but
no Devontae Adams, maybe a little hope.
I still think that's a really, really tough game. And then the Titans, we'll see what they are at that point. I don't think the Titans kind of strike the fear into you like the Packers do, but they're a very good team. And
number 1 seed last year.
Yeah, they're a very good team.
Here's what scares me about the Titans, Dave. For the Eagles, Derrick Henry's healthy. The Eagles have done a lot of good things about adding Hassan Reddick, Kaiser White, Kobe Dean, Jordan Davis. Other than Jordan, a lot of undersized guys on that field trying. That's the one run support game where you go, oh, we got to stop the run this week. That might be an issue from a stylistic standpoint.
It might be, but you still have TJ Edwards, who you would think in that game would take the field quite a bit. Jordan Davis will help. I get what you're saying, but it's the Titans are such an outlier team that it's like, and at that point, let's see if Derrick Henry's healthy. He's at the point in his career where you start to wonder if after last year, it's like, is he going to be the same guy going forward? I don't know that. I don't think they know that. If he's not, then the whole way they've built that team doesn't work. So as good as we think they are and as good as they've been with him being this insane runner, it's like at a certain point, he's not going to be able to do that anymore. So I don't know if it's this year, but if it is, we'll probably know by that point in the season if they're not the same team.
All right, Dave, I'd love to give Howie Roseman credit for this, but I think it's more the National Football League and the way they lay out their calendar and the fact that it's a 52-week-a-year game these days. For most of the end of January, into February, into March, all we talked about here in town was, is a quarterback good enough? Are they going to get another quarterback? They're going to trade for Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, blah, 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 blah. And the Eagles stuck to their guns. We like our quarterback. We're going with our quarterback. We believe in our quarterback. Jalen Hurts. And there was a lot of question marks surrounding him. Because of the draft, because of the schedule, we kind of like a magician. Everybody look over here. Meanwhile, over here, something's going on. Jalen Hurts is still over here. And are we going to return to, we forgot our quarterback isn't the top 10 quarterback. He's not a top half quarterback. Have the Eagles been able to maneuver themselves into a place where just throw Jalen out there and we'll be good enough? Or are all of a sudden it going to catch up to them that, yeah, we didn't upgrade at the quarterback position?
We'll see. They have a choice now. They gave him AJ Brown, and he has a good line. He has some weapons, and we'll find out. The one thing that is totally truthful, and they believe it. I believe them when they say it, is that Jalen's going to maximize his potential. The problem is we don't know what that means. We don't know what the ceiling is. I think he's going to get better. I do. I really, truly, honestly believe he's going to get better. Do I think he's ever going to be a top quarterback? I don't know that. And I think there are reasons to really doubt that based on what we've seen from him. And I like Jalen, and I think they like Jalen, and that matters too. The team likes him. They're going to play hard for him. And I think he can be a functional player. Can he be a great player? He has to prove that. He hasn't done that yet. He's gotten better. And it's funny because that playoff game was so bad, it's really tainted the way we all think about Jalen Hurts. Because if they had missed the playoffs with a 9-8 record and we didn't see him stink it up in Tampa, we probably think a little differently of Jalen Hurts right now. Right? I mean, I think we would have looked at him and said, this guy in his first year as a starter, he got a lot better. The team improved. They won 9 games. They missed the playoffs, and we want to see him in the playoffs, but there's reasons to be optimistic. The problem for him is he went into the playoffs, and he was awful. I mean, he had one of his worst games in the biggest moment, and we know the injury was more significant than we initially thought, but he wasn't very good in the biggest moment, and I think we've viewed the entire offseason through that lens, and fair or not, that's what's happened. And it's just funny though to think about if he didn't play in that game. What if he said he was too hurt to play, and they said you're too hurt to play? Gardner Minshew plays, he stinks, they lose. I think we're talking this offseason has a much different feel to it than it does.
That's true. What if Gardner wins it though? Then you have a different vibe. He is Dave Zangaro. Read him at NBCSports.com, at DZangaro NBCS on Twitter. Eagle iPod with Ruben Frank. You guys have that up right after the schedule. So if you want to hear their thoughts on the schedule, get it there. I'll leave you with this one, Dave. And I was surprised by this. When we talked to Hassan Reddick earlier this week, kind of gave us a little nugget about how the Eagles have shifted their coaching staff, and that sort of the outside linebacker defensive ends are working with Jeremiah Washburn, the interior defensive linemen working with Tracy Rocker, the linebackers obviously with Nick Rallis. Does that tell you anything about how they're going to play their defense, how it's changed their defense, or is it more about the shifting of the personnel department? Because there's a lot of stuff there, and Jeremiah had that dual role, part scout, part coach. What did that tell you?
Yeah, it gives another hint that this is going to be a really hybrid defense. And it already was. Like, we saw them do a lot of different things last year, but there have been all these little hints this offseason, and Hassan Reddick signing was one of the biggest ones, but also drafting Jordan Davis. And then one of the, drafting Kyron Johnson and then signing Noah Ellis after they've kind of brought in these prototype nose tackle, outside linebacker players. I mean, they're going to be in 3-4 a lot. They just are. And it's, I don't think Nick Sirianni was asked, is their base going to be a 4-3 or a 3-4? It's a valid question. I don't know if it's the most important one, because what they are out there with the first play of the game, doesn't
you're going to be
matter.
in nickel most of the time anyway.
Yeah. So I really think Gannon wants to get to the point where it's very week dependent. It's, he looks at an offense and says, what's our best bet to beat this team? And I think now he has enough versatile pieces to do that. But I think the hints are pretty obvious that, we saw a little bit of a hybrid defense last year, but how hybrid was it really? I mean, at times, I think it's going to shift a little bit more where we're going to see them do a lot more different things this year.
And the key guy is going to be Hassan Reddick. He will be the one that kind of dictates how the hybrid works or not. Is he on the hand on the ground? Is he playing off the line? That'll kind of dictate it more than anything else. Dave Zangaro, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you very much for coming on with us. Tell your buddy, Mr. Frank, we send our regards. Thanks for jumping in today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.